لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك.
Dearest beloved divine friends, family, brothers and sisters, first of all, before I proceed with today's khutbah, which will be an experience and a journey from Guyana through our time machine into the Hajj, into Mecca, I wish to warn one and all and remind us that as Guyanese, we have a responsibility to our country, and therefore, first of all, is this disease, this coronavirus. We are a people who are very careless, who are very negligent, and we are not wearing our masks the way we should, or as frequently as we do. We should. There are some people have a tendency of putting it down to their necks. Most times you see most people, it is as if the mouth and the nose is down here in the throat. And most people have their mask down here, which is completely useless. And when they talk, sometimes, or you tell them anything, then they put it up. This is very bad, friends and family, because the disease could be here, could have touched you here, and you put it up into your mouth and into your nose. So I take a few minutes of this khutbah to warn you in this sermon about the importance of hygiene and protection of yourself, your family, and to remember to sanitize, and remember the technique of sanitizing. You're cleaning your palm, because some people forget the palms while you're doing the tips and the nails of your finger. Sometimes we wash and we forget the tongue. We forget the creases, the crevices. And you have rings, you put it forward, you push it backward, you make sure every part is properly sanitized. So friends and family, that is a guidance and a help to the Guyanese people.
لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك شريك لك الله لبيك اللهم لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك يا الحمد يا نعمة يا رحمة شريك لك الله لبيك اللهم لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك يا ناحض يا باسط يا حليم يا شريك لك الله لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن النعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك الله لبيك اللهم لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك.
And so, beloved divine brothers and sisters, this is part 2 of the Hajj, which will be shown sometime after the Hajj. But for education, it is useful, helpful, and necessary. So we ask you to share with your friends and your family. The Hajj and the procedure. You already understand the way the Hajj started, why it was started, the influence of Prophet Abraham, and how the Kaaba was built at this period that's taken place. The Hajj, the entire Hajj, actually has to do with the sacrifice of Ishmael, who was the firstborn. Unlike the Bible, they put that it was Isaac, but that is a part of a plan to create some confusion to show that the mixed people or the black people would not really play that important role in the eyes of God. But God gave Abraham a bigger son, and you always sacrifice which is of the bigger son. And the entire Hajj has to do with that. When Abraham or Ibrahim was suffering from pain, depression and trauma, having had that dream of Allah, which he interpreted to mean to sacrifice his son, because he was told to sacrifice of his son. And he understood it to mean with a knife, and a sacrifice that they normally do with animals, which is like to slit the throat. But there's another dimension to that, and I'll come to that at the end here, ladies and gentlemen. So he took that to mean exactly this. And so as he was moving and knowing he has to go to sacrifice his son in this particular spot, this particular area, it is one that we do in the Hajj. We move from one stage to the other. So now we are going to enter into the sacred state. I gave you an idea in part 1, and if you haven't seen part 1, please go into YouTube or Electric Mosque Guyana YouTube, Electric Mosque Guyana Facebook, to get the part 1 on other Islamic discourses. To enter into the sacred state, we have to enter in by our minds, our souls, our hearts, and then we have to go into Ihram, which is the sacred state. Make your intention for the Hajj. And we put on the Ihram garments. The very first rite of the Hajj is entering Ihram, the sacred position in mind, body, and soul. And the Ihram is usually referred to as a piece of cloth also, which we wrap around ourselves, and here you will see what it looks like. Sometimes it's made of a toweling or a polyester or some kind of linen. There is no thread, there is no stitching. A raw piece of cloth wrapped around the nakedness as we go for rebirth, to face the holy shrine of Allah, the land of Ibrahim, Hazrat Adam, Ishmael, and Prophet Muhammad, to be reborn, to become a new soul, hopefully to live the righteous and the good life. When crossing the outer boundaries of Mecca called Mikat, on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, pilgrims enter Ihram, which entails wearing plain garments, to unstitched clothes for men and loose-fitting clothing for women. If you are now flying, there is a statement there announced that you need to go into ihram at this state. So we have to go and change our clothes. Some of us do it before that. And put yourself in the plane or in the ship or in your car or on your animal. If you're beginning to travel, there's a spot where you must put on, even though you're still flying into or traveling to Makkah, Jeddah, to get to Mina for the 3 days of the Hajj. And then you head to Mina, a sprawling tent city. We were fortunate, our group, we were in a hotel in a rock, in a cave. Our hotel was in a rock, and that hotel and our entire trip was arranged by Aziz Kogir group of companies, and so we had some more comfort. But then you have the tent and tent cities, different standards, different styles of tents, and so forth and so forth. The pilgrims then set out en masse to Mecca. While you're actually in Arabia now, you're heading to the sprawling tent city of Mina, whether by foot, and many people walk by foot, and it's so hot, ladies and gentlemen, friends and families, if you crack an egg on a rock, it will cook. That is the intensity, and all the time we are hearing, and you probably will hear it also in the background here. لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك. As the sound by the millions of pilgrims and exiting their mouth and their throat and their heart and going into the atmosphere, into the realm of the Creator, for the sound travels constantly and then it comes down back to you by gravity, and you're hearing that echo that moves. And what is the echo? Labbaik Allahumma labbaik labbaik la sharika laka labbaik innal hamda wal ni'mati laka wal mulk. And it's by foot, it is an 8 kilometers journey. The pilgrim will spend the day in Mina, only setting out the next morning at dawn. Most of the time in Mina is spent in prayer and remembering Allah, constant prayer. Everywhere you go is prayer. A city suddenly spurts up, but after the Hajj, it wipes out. There is no commerce, there's nothing taking place there, except some Muslims having gone for the mini Hajj, the holy holiday. Then you can take a tour around, but there's nothing else happening there all year long. But there's great commerce taking place there this 3 days. Then we move to the valley of Arafah and stand in the open praising Almighty Allah. The heat of Arabia at midday provides a hint as to what the day of judgment will be like. Some people are also walking from Mina to the plains of Arafah, the spot where Prophet Muhammad gave his last sermon. And another day we will do the last sermon and give you some of the emotionality and the revelation, the last revelation to Muhammad, inshallah. So the heat of Arabia at midday provides a hint as to what the day of judgment would be like, and we will see what the plains of Arafah look like. And you'll see the spot with the monument where Prophet Muhammad gave his last sermon, divine, beloved brothers and sisters, friends and family. The day of Arafat is considered one of the most important days, not just of Hajj, but of the Islamic calendar. The scene of Prophet Muhammad's final sermon, as I said. After making the 14.4 kilometer journey from Mina, pilgrims spend the day here in the reverent prayer, in your tent, in the open. Some people go on the hill and they sit. Some people go to the spot where Prophet Muhammad delivered the last sermon. But the entire area is one of holiness. And as it comes to the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, there is a sound that you hear, a kind of a swooshing kind of sound that you hear. And you have to leave there before dusk. We cannot stay there. They said they cannot explain what will happen, and nobody ever stays there at night. You must leave that entire plain. 3 to 5 million people must vacate that spot. And imagine the hustle and the bustle to get going, to get to a state called Muzdalifah. But we spend the day there prayer, we have your meals, meditating and crying out and reaching out to Allah and asking for forgiveness. Some of us go into a little mountain quietly, meditate, recite Quran, and we pray and we cry and we break down emotionally, asking for forgiveness, asking to be one with Allah, asking for Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah, be with us, and that we be with him when we pass into the Akhirah, and that he will make intercession for us in the day of judgment to Allah. And there is great emotion and travail and pain, and when you finish, the sisters hug the sisters and the brothers hug the sisters as we now set out with deep thought and feelings heading for Muzdalifah. After sunset, it is time to move again, this time to Muzdalifah, a 9-kilometer trip where they spend the night under the stars. The only thing you can have is an umbrella, no house. From the hottest day, which is the night of Dhul Hijjah, to the coldest night, which is the night of Dhul Hijjah, from the heat to the cold, in open, and you can't wear any stitched clothes, ladies and gentlemen, no coat. You have to sacrifice, you have to suffer, you have to feel the pangs of Ibrahim alayhi salam. You got to understand what he went through. You have to feel that pain to be a part of this pilgrimage. Whether you do it from here by your heart or your mind, whether you do it by going to the Hajj. Where they spend the night under the stars. Many will also begin collecting pebbles for tomorrow's rites, departing again just before sunrise. So you collect your pebbles there, which will be used to pelt the shaitan, the 3 shaitan that tempted Ishmael not to cooperate with his father and to refuse to be slaughtered, to be killed for his father's closeness with the Creator. For those performing Hajj, the day is known as Yawm ul-Hajj al-Akbar, the big Hajj day, and it's probably the longest day of the pilgrimage and the most dangerous. The 10th of Dhul Hijjah is Eid al-Adha, a day celebrated by Muslims around the world as the greater of the 2 Muslim holidays. Pilgrims start the day in Muzdalifah and begin to head back to Mina before dawn. After much pain and travail and being there in the cold, from the hottest day to the coldest day, praying and meditating and reaching out to Allah. On the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, the Eid day, a day of celebration, the pilgrim leaves Muzdalifah and begin heading back to Mina before dawn, just before the dawn breaks. We are on our way, on the roads, many walking, many still riding animals, some or most of us on cars and trucks and buses. This act is a symbolic stoning of the devil. Once in Mina, they performed the first Rami, or throwing 7 pebbles at the largest of the 3 columns known as Jamarat. That was the big devil, ladies and gentlemen. There were 3 devils that tried to influence Ishmael not to cooperate with his father. So we will also see the Jamarat The act is a symbolic study of the devil based on historical tradition. God told Abraham to sacrifice his son. The story goes as proof of faith. It is believed that in this spot in Mina the devil appeared and tried to dissuade Abraham from heeding the command. Devil trying to tempt Abraham himself. Abraham responded by throwing stones to scare him off. And that is why the throwing of the stones, friends and families. Millions of pilgrims converge at the Jabbarat Bridge, which houses the three columns representing the devil, in order to reenact the story, to be a part there. But the millions of people there, ladies and gentlemen, I recall me standing there. Before I could catch myself, I moved for several rods out of control. I lost my sandals. And then I end up automatically having another sandals in my feet. And as people were pelting the devil, or the symbol of the devil, I even got hit one in my head. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, brothers and sisters. So, one has to be very, very careful when one goes to this with a number of people. It could also turn out to be dangerous. Tremendous security control, and so on. After casting their stones, the pilgrims must perform the sacrifice. But I was saying that was the big devil who tempted Abraham. Then there was another one, a middle-sized one, that tempted Ishmael. Then there was a little one, like a little boy, who was also put to tempt Ishmael at about his age group, not to go, not to allow the sacrifice. But they went on. And all that we saw took place, or all that I just said, took place there, ladies and gentlemen, because Ishmael was a willing participant to his father's understanding of what was really taking place. And this is where I want to mention to you, from my understanding and reading, that was the minor sacrifice. There in Mina is the spot where he went to sacrifice his son, and the miracle took place, in which the knife was knocked out of his hand, and an animal was placed there for the sacrifice, to replace that of the son. And this is why we continue and are closest to Abraham, because we the Muslims, we are the only people who commemorate this sacrifice. And so, friends and family, ladies and gentlemen, after casting their stones, it's an emotional moment too, you know. You have to feel that emotion. You need to go there, make an intention. So even because of money, you can't make it to the Hajj, and you pass away, you die, Allah will know in your heart you made that intention, and it will be as if you went. But I believe in Guyana and around the world, we need to have a fund created. And some countries do that. Some countries do that, like in India. India is known to help to finance the poorer people to travel by boat to go to Mecca, to perform the Hajj. And a few countries do that, and the CIOG does some of that as well. But we need to do it on a larger scale, so we can take more and more truly dedicated Muslim people who are poor and can't go to the Hajj. Friends and family, brothers and sisters, after casting the stone, the pilgrims performed the sacrifice, completing the story. When Abraham went to sacrifice his son, he found God and placed a ram there to be slaughtered, as I said. But what was the greatest sacrifice, ladies and gentlemen? I want to use this opportunity to tell you. Slaughtering and slicing the neck is an easy act. The true sacrifice is abandoning his son and his beloved wife, Hajar or Hagar, the woman who saved humanity and Islam, a black woman after whom the Hajj is named, an African woman, Hajar, to abandon them, his wife, into the wilderness. Dearest beloved divine brothers and sisters, friends and families, that is the greatest sacrifice. To leave them there, not knowing what will happen, not knowing if when he returns, he will find bones or not even bones, when animals will devour them. That to me, this speaker, this presenter of this sermon, of this khutbah, of this trip through our time machine into Mecca, that's my opinion, that is the greater sacrifice. Think on that for a moment. Pilgrims must not slaughter a sheep, a goat, a cow, or camel, or more likely pay for it to be done in their names. At this point, pilgrims trim off or shave, men only, their hair, and remove the ihram clothes. The clothes is now being removed. You shave your head. Some people cut a piece symbolically. I shave my head. I do what I think is right. And then proceed to Makkah to perform tawaf, for circling the Kaaba 7 times. Then walking 7 times between the hills of Safa and Marwa. And I told you about the Safa and the Marwa, how it works in my previous sermon, brothers and sisters, divine friends and families. The 2 mountains that Hajar was running between one and the other as a mother, trying to get water for his beautiful son. And there you have Safa, and there you have Marwa. And then you have some spots where she was hopping in the green lights tell us that at that spot we must run symbolically and hop like how she was hopping and cry out to Allah. And then you walk some spots and lamenting some spots so that it lives in you. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I saw some men and women in wheelchair, but when they got there, they got up and forced themselves to hop as Hagar hopped and to walk as Hagar walked, even if they were not healed fully. But they did it. Some of them just did even one spot, because this is the dream to fulfill the last and the final pillar of Islam. My divine friends and family, brothers and sisters, when all is finally done, they return to their campsite in Mina, or in our case, in our hotel within the cave or rock. Many people then go to the Prophet's mosque in Medina. That's another miracle. That's another story from yours truly for another time. Uhud, where the second battle took place. Prophet Muhammad was misled, and some of his people left him and left the spot, and he almost died, and they lost that war because of the negligence of the soldiers. And the spot where his beloved uncle Hamza is buried, where Hind, the child of the devil, ate the heart of Hamza. That's another story for another time, and all the magic and all the wonders of Medina from yours truly, your brother, me, Haji Roshan Khan. But Medina is optional. A man who has completed the Hajj is called a Haji. A woman who has completed it is called a Haji. At the end of the Hajj, Muslims from all over the world celebrate the holiday known as Eid al-Adha, a festival of sacrifice, and they eat having completed the Hajj, and they become leaders in their society and carry the name. For some reason or the other, I like the title. It goes with me. I use it all the time. Haji Roshan Khan. I know it stays with me. Some people don't like it, but somehow or the other, the title stayed with me. People call me it, and it lived with me, and I even use it. Thank you, Allah. You have your reasons and your purpose. The festival commemorates the obedience of Prophet Ibrahim when he was ordered to sacrifice his son Ishmael. Abraham proved his love and devotion to Almighty Allah by showing his willingness to even kill his beloved son, and as I said, to abandon them finally, which is the greatest sacrifice, to my opinion, in the wilderness. In the end, Abraham did not have to kill his son, as Almighty Allah gave him a symbolic animal to slaughter, the ram. Friends and families, brothers and sisters, have been traveling with me on the time machine into Mecca in times past, and in modern times. You will now travel back with me to Guyana, back in our time machine, and we now travel back to Guyana. In peace, mercies, blessings of Allah be with one another. I thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
يا من هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الرحمن الرحيم الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن